So it's day 14 of the Jewel of Arabia expedition. We're at a place called Ras Sidra, just north of Duqm. If I look to my right, I can see the lights of Duqm about 40 kilometres to the south, and we'll be heading to Duqm tomorrow. We haven't moved at all today, and we're not worried about that at all. It's been a lovely day just to catch up, wash some clothes, swim in the sea, so wash ourselves, sort and tidy the vehicles out, and just got our equipment organised, because today, or tomorrow rather, is the morning of day 15, so we're exactly halfway through the Jewel of Arabia expedition. And a friend in Muscat, an Omani friend called Khalid Haribi, once told me that in Oman the stories start where the roads end. And I think for centuries Oman has been a home for explorers, and not just desert explorers, people like Ibn Battuta, the famous explorer who sailed and travelled the world, and people like Wilfrid Thesiger, and of course Bertram Thomas, the man in whose footsteps we are following. And yesterday we had Scott MacDonald walking with us, through the CEO of the British Council, and Thomas Lloyd, the country director of the British Council in Oman. But tonight we've got a really fantastic person who I have wanted to meet for many years. We've been aware of each other and exchanged emails through mutual friends, but it's really great to be able to sit around the fire tonight with someone called Alan Chambers. And if you Google Alan and look at what he's done with his life, it's really, really impressive. But what I find most impressive, having spent half an hour talking to him tonight, is that what he does seems to get better and better, and more and more relevant, which is really brilliant. So Alan, it's great to be with you around the fire on the coast here in Oman. And just to start off with, just perhaps share with us your life as an explorer. How did you start? What would you say are the highlights of your career as an explorer?
Thank you, Mark. I find it fascinating that our paths have crossed on this beach in Oman, which is brilliant, after all these years. It all started really, obviously, I left school at a very young age of 16, joined the Royal Marines at 16, which was an adventure in itself, joining the military, especially the Royal Marines. And then during or post a deployment, a very close friend of a few of ours, a guy called Richard Mark Bell, broke his neck, had a C5 break, became quadriplegic. And that was really a trigger for me and a pivot where, what could we do to raise money for spinal research to hopefully try and get Rick Bell out of a wheelchair? And at the same time, Christopher Reeve, Superman in America, he broke his neck on a horse riding accident. So we connected two charities, one in America and one in the UK, all about spinal research. So we thought, right, what can we do? We'll do some sponsored walks, but they weren't the normal walks. So the first walk we did was 850 kilometres across Iceland from the west coast to the east coast. And the Icelandic people said, it'll never be achieved, no one will do it. And I think that was really, red rag to a bull. We put a lot of time in the planning, preparation, as you're aware, and we completed it. And we were very lucky to raise some funds for spinal research. I then raised the bar. I've massively followed Ranulph Fiennes for years and his polar exploits, and David Hempel Adams and what they were trying to achieve, and then set my sights on trying to walk from Canada unsupported to the North Pole. Big undertaking after Iceland, so spent years in the Nunavut region of Canada trying to learn the craft really of sea ice and navigating on sea ice and the risks, and then walked from Canada to the North Pole. And that took it took 71 days. It was quite a grueling trip, but we succeeded. And then I left the Royal Marines and carried on as a serious and serial adventurer. So the North Pole 15 times. I then went down to the South Pole, and then skied across Greenland. And in between that, ran quite a lot of, charity-based expeditions. So jungles, deserts, Costa Rica, Vietnam, Cambodia, Svalbard, Norway. And put together serious expeditions, but to raise money for probably about 5 serious charities. Mainly the Lewis Moody Foundation, the brain tumour charity, Born Premature, a charity all about premature birth, and then lately the last trip in Africa was for Kids Village up in the Midlands. So those charity trips have helped me not just learn the craft, but manage people when they're in really uncomfortable situations. So I think that's been my skill set, having that adventurous spirit, but taking trips on that people don't want to do, and being able to get people basically to the ends of the earth safely. And we've probably raised around of about 15 to 16 million pounds doing that.
Wow.
So it's been an amazing experience, meeting people along the way, taking people with you, helping people on their journey to succeed. And then about 3 years ago, I was asked to put together a project to take, a client's probably the wrong word, but a gentleman and his friends down to Antarctica to see the eclipse. I've never seen a total eclipse, so that was an amazing project to do the research and historical weather patterns and cloud formations to try and get the optimum time of darkness in totality. So we were down in Antarctica for about 5 weeks waiting for the eclipse, because you don't get a second chance, right? It's when it happens, it happens. And it went brilliantly, and it worked really, really well. The whole trip was success, safe. We had 90 seconds of totality, but chatting to the guy whose trip it was in the evenings, I was really taken back, because these conversations were about what can we do while we're alive that will have an impact in 300 years' time. And that had a profound effect on me, because he was right. He was trying to do things in his lifetime that he would never see the results, but hoping it has a positive impact for people and every living creature and the planet itself. So I started to think about, well, I've still got a few years left adventuring, and where does my skill set leave me? What could I do? And that's when Mission Spiritus was found, really, from that one conversation over a pot of coffee in Antarctica about the next chapter in my life of adventure, not trying to be the first, not trying to climb the highest or do something new, but to have a scientific-based calling with expeditions that'll have a purpose and hopefully will have an impact in 300 years. So that's the chapter I've started to work towards now.
Yeah, no, that's so inspiring to hear that, Alan, because journey with purpose, I think, is absolutely the way to go. And I fear there's very little to be gained by being the fastest and the first and the last. We can all make a difference, and I think what you're doing is just fantastic. And I think, isn't it supposed to be a reflection of wisdom? The person who plants a tree under whose shade he will never sit, and that's the measure of true wealth and wisdom, isn't it? But one of the aims of the Jewel of Arabia expedition that we're doing is to showcase the incredible biodiversity of Oman and the innovation that's going into ensuring that Oman has a sustainable future in terms of its environment and biodiversity and this transition to renewable energy. But Oman is no different to any other country in the world in terms of how to deal with this issue of plastic. And I come from a beautiful country called Scotland, and you walk on the beach in Scotland and there's just too much plastic wherever you go. And much of that is visible plastic, but I know there are things that you're looking at on your project here now, which you can share with us in a minute, that is plastic that we can't even see. So Mission Spiritus, I've heard of it. I don't know anything about it, so I'd be really grateful if you could just tell us what it's all about and what you're doing here in Oman. But then where can people go to find out more about it if they're interested? Yeah,
so Mission Spiritus was the concept born in Antarctica over that pot of coffee. So I've walked from the coast to the North Pole. Obviously, as an adventurer, you want to walk from the coast of Antarctica to the South Pole, so you've done them both. So I planned that project to walk from Hercules Inlet to the South Pole. In fact, exactly a year ago today, I'm sat talking to you, I was stood at the South Pole.
Goodness.
Exactly a year today. Right. So with a wonderful guy called Bertram Thomas. So Mission Spiritus, the concept was to walk across remote areas, or the remotest areas we could find on each continent, and collect samples of ice, snow, sand, soil, permafrost, river water, seawater. And then they will be then transported back to New York, Columbia University, the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory and the Climate School there. Two incredible people there, Dr. Maureen Ramo and Beijing Yan, who's meeting us out here in Muscat. And they're analysing the samples we brought back from Antarctica, 52 snow samples over 1,100 kilometres, just purely looking for the things you identified, Mark, which was micro and nanoplastics. So a nanoplastic is 1,000th of a millimetre, so you can't see it. You know, if I brushed your clothing now, I'm sure there'll be some nanoplastic fibres that come off and I breathe in. So you can't avoid it. So they're not looking for anything else. It's just the remoteness of Antarctica with no main population and no real animals and no pollution. There shouldn't be nano and microplastics on that snow. And I know they've already started to do the research from the samples from Antarctica, and random, because we took 52 samples, they've found plastic along that route. So it was the longest ever snow sample collection expedition from the coast to the pole, which means the only explanation is that it's snowing plastic. You know, so really, really sad. And it's not about demonising plastic, because plastic is everywhere. It's every part of our lives, and it will be for the future. But it's only been around since the end of the Second World War, right? So it's about how do you manage the plastic, you know, the plastic that's in our clothing, the plastic that's in some of the materials that we wear or we use in the house, and how do they recycle that plastic. So we thought if we could prove that Mission Spiritus was successful across the remoteness of Antarctica, we'll then look at the other 6 continents left, and every expedition Mission Spiritus tries to put together and achieve, we check with Columbia University. Firstly, it's remote enough, and then they will tell us about the certain weather patterns, whether it be tidal, wind. So then we make sure that we test the most remote soil, sand, water, surrounding waters that is available in that area. So Mission Spiritus is an ambitious program over 5 years to trek across the world, the 7 continents, taking Earth samples, getting them back to Columbia University in New York, and then hopefully build some kind of pattern that eventually, like the gentleman said to me in the tent, through an education program or just trying to change a global culture about plastics, that maybe in 300 years it'll have an impact, what we're doing now.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, it's all about legacy and impact, and so here in Oman, you've been here for how long, and what have you been doing whilst you've been here?
So the plan was to go to walk from the south to the north, and you know this place better than anybody, so into Salalah and then inserted to the empty quarter, and then through those really big dunes, and again 52 sand samples this time. And working with Beijing Yang at Columbia, they wanted the top sand, so the blown sand that's been freshly blown on the latest bit of wind or the moving dune. So every 20 kilometres, no matter where we are, we have to put on the white coats, the lab coats, the white gloves, and get the 4 mil sifter out and sift enough sand to go into a jar, sealed, geotagged, location photographed, and all recorded, wind direction, wind speed, grid reference, so on and so forth, and then that's sealed. And we're up to 34 samples now, so we've worked our way across the dunes, and then it obviously getting into the more and more expanse of big, as you know, big sandy plains, relentless plains, less and less dunes. And then we found ourselves on the beach last night, which we didn't take a sample because we knew there'd be plastic. You can just see this, we're surrounded by it even this evening. And then, so that was the first 3 phases in the dunes, and then on the flats, and then moving to where we are now. And then tomorrow we move to a different location, and then we start our last phase 4, across. Is it the
Wahiba Sands?
Wahiba Sands,
yeah.
You know very well.
Yeah, well,
so that's the plan.
Yeah, that was where the Royal Geographical Society did their intensive research in the mid-1980s, now called the Sharqiya Sands. And I think you're actually another amazing thing, Alan, is that you're going to be meeting Amar al-Wahibi, who's the camel guy that we've just crossed those sands with from north to south. You're going to be going south to north. So it's brilliant that we're able to meet up like this and have so much in common. And just if anyone's listening to this podcast who wants to find out more about Mission Spiritus and the work that you're doing, is there a website or anything?
missionspiritus.com, and then Billy Perham and Dave Siegel, 3 of us, and now Elizabeth Siegel, our 4th team member arrived tonight. So David's very good, and he's writing the blogs, and they've been posted on Instagram and LinkedIn, through Mako Trading as well, David's company, but mainly through missionspiritus.com. All the blogs that we're doing. We're not doing many. We're probably doing 5, one at the beginning and 1 each phase, and then Columbia University Bejan's meeting us in Muscat, and we'll probably, after we've gone to the Outward Bounds Centre and have a little celebration dinner, and then do a final blog from Muscat with Bejan, because what we've tried to do is to make sure that the main aim of this is to collect the sand, and it's the science, but we're doing it through an adventurous platform. Yeah. So that's the main aim, and we don't want to deter from that. It's not about us. It's that we're just the Earth's gardeners. Yeah. Great
turn of phrase there. And just to finish off, really, I couldn't, and I hope this fellow who's coming to collect those samples realises how heavy that box is, because Alan showed me earlier the samples that they've been capturing, and what is amazing is how sand changes, not just in colour but in consistency and structure. Every bottle seemed to be slightly different, and that was brilliant. But what I noticed, Alan, was on the box it said Giordano.
Yes.
And there's a real synergy there with Jewel of Arabia, because the person we're following is a British explorer who was Wazir to Sultan Timur here in Oman from 1926 to 1932. And he was the first European to cross that great sand desert where you started your journey. And he was born and died in a little village just behind Giordano in Bristol. So there's another amazing coincidence and bit of common ground.
Yeah, well, my wife Rachel, she's from Bristol. We live in Bristol. The pelly cases, that were all designed for us by Johnny Bull from Giordano, and so it's somewhere really close. And now you've sent me the picture of his house. I'm convinced one of our family friends lives on the same street he lived on, in Pill.
Well,
I'm sure
there's clearly something in the water in Bristol that brings out the explorer in many folks. So, Alan, thanks very much, and the best of luck on the days that remain for Mission Spiritus here in Oman.
Thank you very much, Mark, and the same to you.